So what the webinar is about today, it's a case study of a refinery that achieved $46.3 million in improvement in refining margins. And they did that by more effectively and efficiently engaging frontline employees, people like operators, maintenance technicians, support personnel. So when the senior vice president approached me about becoming part of the team and supporting them with consulting experience around reliability consulting, I was really glad to have the opportunity. I just felt good about it. It felt like it was in my wheelhouse and I was ready to go. As he explained it, I even became more aware that it was in my wheelhouse. He wanted measurable results within 3 to 6 months start of the project. He wanted evidence and measures that there had been a return on investment. And as I think about that, I think it was, for his purposes, it was the idea that he wanted to let people know that he made a good decision in partnering up with me. As I thought about that and this idea of it in my wheelhouse, there were 3 things that made me think that that's what it was about. One, I had 30 plus years experience in the refining industry around reliability consulting. 2, I worked with a vice president of a nitrogen fertilizer plant who had very similar expectations as the senior vice president of refining. He wanted evidence within 3 to 6 months. He wanted to be able to enjoy the fruits of having improvements in charge rates and production of the fertilizer plant. And the third thing that really made me excited, I had a patent on a tool that really fit right in with what they were asking to do. The tool was designed to lead groups down a path that would improve refining margins or charge rates of units in a refinery. It had predictability. It could predict the outcomes that whoever I was working with wanted to achieve, and that it could provide estimates so they could slide in as to where they wanted to fit the whole program with everything else they had on the plate. So with that, let's get going here on the move along here if I can. Okay, here we go. So the webinar purpose is to share knowledge. And this statement doesn't say it all, but it says a lot about it. It's a case study on how a refinery leadership team achieved that 46.3 million improvement in refining margins by integrating leaders, managers, operators, and frontline support personnel into the reliability continuous improvement initiative. But what this can't convey to you is how much of passion I have in helping people, gaining knowledge that will help them move forward on things that are important to them. And that is a passion of mine, and I love it. So here's a little deeper dive into what we're going to talk about today. We're going to show you how that leadership team used the patented Genesis Reliability Evaluation Analytical Tool. And that is a mouthful, so from now on, I'm going to refer to it as the GREAT tool, to implement the Reliability Continuous Improvement Initiative. And that also is a mouthful, so I'm going to refer to that as an RCII. So some of the things I'm going to talk about today is how that tool was used to bridge the gap between stakeholders, all stakeholders, and connect it with the contributions of frontline employees. How they discovered a new opportunity with this tool for the RCII, how they piloted in the CDUs, and how they engaged and kept employees engaged in the process. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about how they discovered additional opportunities for engaging frontline employees. So this is the first slide that shows what the tool can do and how it was used by the refinery leadership team to decide to help set a goal that everyone could buy into. So the top line of this slide shows what the barrels per calendar day rates were in the CDUs for the 366 days prior to the start of the RCII. The second set of the goals before turnaround are shown as in the line 68,000, 35,000, and 33,000. And then the goals after turnaround. Well, as you can imagine, there were some things that were concerning about those goals. And one of them was how the percentage of increase they were looking for in 182 days before turnaround. For instance, the before turnaround goals were ranged from 7 to 9%. The goals after turnaround, the increase ranged from 13 to 16%. But the real importance of this slide is that those before turnaround, the green, those patented lead indicators that the tool provided information on showed that the refinery personnel were well positioned to meet those goals before turnaround. Goals after turnaround, not the same picture. The picture there was that there were no indicators from the lead indicators that those goals were reachable. In other words, they were goals that were ambitious and set by something that someone thought about goals. There was no evidence that they were doable. So as we move on, the other thing about that the great tool that helped them out was that it created energy around achieving goals. Everyone saw the path that was revealed in that last slide. So the SVP, he saw a path to achieving his 10% goals. The refinery manager, he no longer kept focused on negotiating a reduction in the goals. He recognized that his organization was well positioned to get to the turnaround goals. The leadership team and managers saw the path and jumped on board. The refinery leadership decided to work with GRG to integrate frontline employees and support personnel into the RCII. The other thing the goals did was it was an opportunity to make a credible estimate of what the return or how much money or getting the opportunity, banking it. So on this slide here, I'm going to point to the upper left-hand corner, well, below the refinery units. One of the things the GREAT tool did with it, we could do with the analysis of the GREAT tool, was identifying new opportunities. These were opportunities that no one else had thought of. They were there. They were easily identified or easily assimilated into the whole project, but they had not been identified by any of the other tools that this refinery was using. Other one, eliminate lost opportunities. That's common knowledge in the circles I travel in, a common knowledge of a term that's used in refining. The difference here was that with another piece of the information from that analysis, we were able to estimate that was. And without that piece, that becomes sort of a guesstimate. It's not really backed up by data. It now backed up by data. Eliminate the unit going down. That's it's a pretty simple calculation, number of days that you're down by the number of barrels per calendar day we're expecting. But the total amount of this particular process was $25.2 million. Now, the 2.8 is impressive, but it wasn't a game changer. I mean, it would have met the goals for before turnaround, and the ROI would have been okay, but it wasn't a game changer. But the 25.2 million was a game changer. And in reviewing the numbers behind that, if we could optimize, if the refinery could optimize those opportunities identified by the GREAT tool, all the others would fall in place. The whole 25.2 million would be able to be banked. So let's go on and see what happened after 122 days in. With the information on the prior two slides, there was a lot of time spent on showing and getting buy-in to the whole RCII. So meetings with all levels of the organizations, meetings with about how we could get to the goal and how how the positioning they had done to point the frontline supervisors, how they could contribute to that. So at 122 days, we looked again at those indicators. And what we were looking for there was, what the refinery leadership team was looking for there was, are they keeping the frontline employees' contributions flowing into the process? In every case, both before turnaround and after turnaround, the patented lead indicators suggested that the refinery was better positioned 122 days in than when we had ran that analysis at the beginning of the project. And if you remember, the goals after turnaround, and when we first ran the analysis, there was no indication that those goals were doable. They were challenging, and someone had an idea that they could make it, but there was no evidence. There is now evidence, 122 days in, there is evidence from those patented lead indicators that the goals after turnaround the employees are being better positioned to make those. So let's look at the results of that effort 122 days in. $9.7 million in improved refining margins. And that 9.7 million was far exceeded the expectations of anyone that was involved in making those happen. But there were also other questions to answer on this. And two of the questions were, are the lead indicators predictive? And did the leadership team meet or exceed stakeholders' expectations by more effectively and efficiently integrating frontline employees into the process? Let's go to the next slide. I think that will answer the question. So this slide shows what the barrels per calendar day that were benchmarked 366 days immediately preceding the start of the RCII. And the next column shows what it was like 122 days in. If CDU number one improvement was 11% in barrels per calendar day, 5.3 million in refining margins. CDU number two improvement 15% in barrels per calendar day, 4.4 in refining margins. Now, the thing that made the predictability of the other slide evident was that if you notice, you add that up, that's 9.7 million. That was the same thing that measuring the improvements from the RCII, they equate. So basically the checkbook bounced, and it showed that there was predictability in those numbers for improvement from the RCII. Another one I think jumps out at is there was no one that was dissatisfied with the improvements after 122 days in. Okay. The other thing that this did, this gave this information, or this type of success, allowed the leadership team decided to continue on this path with the guidance and help of GRG. So one of the things they do, they pivoted toward that analysis of what frontline employees' contributions, how did they contribute that much money, and those types of results. Well, one of the things they grasped onto, how do we optimize frontline employees' contributions? How do we help them gain efficiencies in eliminating lost opportunity and unit down days? In this particular case, since we were so close to turnaround, they also recognized how valuable that experienced pool of operators, maintenance techs, and other support personnel could be to getting the results they wanted. Excuse me. And the engineering support, because of turnaround coming up, was really focused on turnaround activities, and there was their focus. They were very focused and tunnel vision to that, and with good reason. As you all know, turnaround is a very important aspect of the refining industry. The workflow processes that we needed to check and see if they would support the contributions that frontline employees offered to the party. And the refinery leadership management team asked GRG to assess the workflow practices. We found nothing in there that appeared to be a roadblock to engaging frontline employees. And then the analysis of the Genesis Great Reliability patented GREAT tool also continued. We continued to use that to make sure we were still on the path. Refinery leadership team's discovery process. First thing they did, they were intent, excuse me, they were intent on finding something that were pace setting. In other words, they wanted to know about best practices, but they didn't want to stop there. If they'd have stopped there, they would not have uncovered that 2.8 million opportunity of new opportunities. The leadership bridged the goals to operators' contributions. They used the patented tool to estimate refining margin improvements and implement patented lead indicators. The GRG coached the refinery leaders on servant leadership, and they used the information from the GREAT tool to measure and communicate contributions to achieving goals. That was the end of the discovery process. We now switch to a phase of what can we do more effectively to add to the number of people that are frontline employees that are engaged in the process. And we wanted to look at after that initial discovery phase, which lasted 122 days, we went into looking at before turnaround, and analyze and implement and measure additional things to keep the contributions from frontline employees flowing. So the first place we started was we looked at the refinery process flow diagram. And that obviously this is not in total the process flow diagram, but it shows what we zeroed in on. In the delayed coker chain and in the FCC fluid cracker train, there were problems that they were aware of. So with that shortage of engineers, what can we do in there based upon how frontline employees are positioned to help out? So we looked at those two. I'm going to go through this in a little more detail, the work after or before turnaround, excuse me. But I first want to show you the results of that effort. 122 days, we're now 182 days in, and we're looking for, are we continuing, or the refinery leadership team are we continuing to support the frontline employees in a way that allows them to contribute significantly to what we're trying to achieve? So we ran again on and measured the improvements in those opportunities that have been identified by the GREAT tool, and it was 4.7 million. Drop down now to the total. We're 182 days in, 12.3 million improvement in refining margins. You take the total that was done in 122 days, and 9.7 million away from that, and in 60 days, they had added an additional $2.6 million improvement to refining margins. So how did they do that? They implemented changes that resulted in additional increases to the refining margins, and they kept track of that by those lead indicators that we were monitoring to see if what we were doing or what they were doing, the reliability or refinery leadership team was doing to keep frontline employees engaged. They made improvements in how they managed operator-driven reliability. Reliability success analysis was implemented to complement root cause failure analysis. Autonomous maintenance, wherever there were opportunities to implement autonomous maintenance tasks, it was done. Operator training, another just a sidelight on operator training. That the SVP, the Senior Vice President of Refining, personally got involved in making sure operators got the resources and the training they needed to optimize their contribution. He was personally, even to the point where he spent time down in the refinery floor working with them personally. Servant leadership, listening to the operators about what they needed to optimize their contribution, spare parts availability, 24/7 maintenance support. And they look for opportunities to enable continuous improvement in other units in the refinery. And we're going to go through one here in a minute on the FCCU chain and the delayed coker train. So the particular thing the particular thing in the delayed coker and FCCU train that was pointed out as where they needed help immediately was in the vacuum distillation units. So we ran an analysis to see how were frontline employees positioned to help that. And here's what it showed. It shows the 366 days, consecutive days before the start of the RCII, the goals before turnaround, the goals after turnaround. And the green patented lead indicators suggested that there were opportunities that could be taken advantage of with how frontline employees were positioned to help in that endeavor. Let's go back now. Well, one other thing on that slide, the rest of the process, whether it be VDUs, whether it be FCCs, whether it be delayed cokers, whether it be alkylation units, all showed that profile. And so we satisfied another requirement of the SVP and the refinery leadership team. This process or this tool could be used in all units of the refinery. So now let's go to 182 days in and look at some more information on the growth of the refinery personnel in positioning themselves for after turnaround. And this here is now we're in the analytical phase. It's the 182 days, and then turnaround is going to start. So we looked at the patented Genesis reliability great tool, what those indicators were showing. Again, they were showing improvement over past check-ins with these indicators. Now, the only reason it's important now is it confirmed, as we'll see in a later slide, it confirmed that it was a predictor of what could happen. The other good news was that the goals after turnaround, those patented lead indicators were also showing a substantial improvement. So the next slide, this was one that provided a lot of information about the predictability of the tool. And so the blue there is the benchmarked and what happened at 122 days. The orange is in one case, the CDU number 178 days, and in CDU number 2, 182 days. The difference in those number of days is because we signed, they took the unit, they did not take the units down, the CDUs down at the same time going into turnaround. But CDU number 1 improvements, 10% in barrels per calendar day, 5.9 margin in refining margins. CDU number 2, 12% in barrels per calendar day, 6.4 million in refining margins. Now, I don't know if you recall, but on the, again, there was now an additional data point that said, you know, those improvements from the continuous improvement RCII, the dollars match up with these commonly used indicator or measures of success, barrels per calendar day. So the other big thing about that confidence was that with the confidence in that it, or the data to show that it had done what it had done before turnaround indicated that they were going to make their goals. Since that was true, there was a higher level of confidence now that they were going to make their goals after coming out of turnaround, given that turnaround is going to be a success. So how this impacted the relationship between GRG and the refinery leadership team was they signed up for at least another 55 days of support. So during turnaround, they did the things that turnarounds do, or they implemented fixes to improve charge rates for the CDUs and the ability of other units to support those charge rate. They did work to reduce the rate cuts. They did work to make sure that they had that the elimination of down days would continue, and they made inputs. They implemented things that would increase the refinery CDU's safe, sustainable barrels per calendar day charge rate. GRG, on the other hand, took their efforts off-site. They provided us the information for all the units in the refinery, and we completed an analysis of all the refinery units with the GREAT tool. GRG developed a monthly report to track improvements after turnaround. The other thing about turnaround that I want to mention is that right after turnaround, the refinery manager was changed, and in that change, there were questions about what to do with GRG. Should we continue with them, or should we cut the relationship now? And they decided to continue. And the only reason that they decided to continue was because of the track record of and the results they were getting. So new refinery manager now, and the other thing that was important, important piece of it, that what they did not continue at the same level of support that was there before turnaround. All the work from that point on was work off-site with those reports that were developed during turnaround, and with those tools that we used to monitor whether they were on track or not, and that was all done off-site. And the report sent to the refinery manager, which I understand he used from the standpoint of it was by unit, so he had a tool to guide the whole organization with, everyone in every unit. So 312 days after improvement, or 312 days after turnaround, we've got, excuse me, I need to drink a there was a 46 for 555 days. Now we've been working on continuous improvement about 18 months. So the improvement of 46.3 million total, 555 days, less the total before turnaround, which was 12.3 million, $34 million improvement after turnaround. The other thing I'd like to point out about this slide is now the biggest contributor to improvement are those opportunities that were identified with Genesis Reliability's great tool. And maybe even more, well, it has the same importance. It's 312 days. The refinery management team, the leadership and management team decided that it was time for the relationship to come to an end between GRG and the refinery. So here's the line that shows that connection between reliability improvements and what that meant in barrels per day. The blue part, the benchmark; the rust part, the before turnaround analysis, implemented measure, and 312 days and 306 days. The difference, again, because those days is the units came up at different times. But in total, a 22% improvement in barrels per calendar day, an 18% improvement in barrels per calendar day for CDU number 2. Okay, when something like this comes to an end, it's sort of bittersweet. I mean, great to do make all these improvements, great to work with people to help them make improvements. But I would suggest that the beginning of a great story also has chapters behind it. And GRG is looking for how to proceed to help both parties experience the great experience of achieving goals that exceed stakeholders' expectations. So there were lessons learned from the case study. Discovery of new opportunities can be done on or off site. In these days, the pandemic, this is a great opportunity to move forward with people that want to move forward. Start with the why versus the how. Keep on the why. Until you connect the why to making what you want, get the opportunity you want, stay on the why. There were many reliability best practices that we looked at that looked good, but we couldn't connect them to the why. That huge investment in making it to that $46.3 million. The value of the reliability continuous improvement can be estimated and can be measured, as shown by what I went through in the case study. Patented lead indicators are predictive, and patented lead indicators can dial in on the support needed for reliability continuous improvement initiatives, as shown when the refinery manager decided, let's use their support, but let's cut it back from offsite. Okay. So I have some questions for the attendees. Would increasing refinery CDU charge rates be beneficial to your bottom line during the COVID-19 pandemic? If you believe, as it does, like we know it will, then I invite you to answer the questions on the following slides. Question number 2, if you believe there is, like we know there is it time to find answers to the questions on the next 2 slides? And that follows to the recommendation. We would like to help you if you decide you want answers to those questions. So here's where it started with the case study. Let's find a common goal. Let's look at how well refinery employees are positioned to help us get to those goals by the contributions they could make. You might have more CDUs than this, you might have less. That's not the important point of the slide. The point of the slide is we believe that every refinery out there has some place they can start to build that contributions from frontline employees. Once we get to a goal, we can make estimates, credible estimates of what that means to the bottom line in your refinery. And with that, the information you need to juggle and work on your plate as to what's more important, this reliability continuous improvement initiative or other initiatives that you have going on. So with that, and one other slide here, the GRG consultant, this is a testimonial. GRG consultant was able to help my team use their strengths to develop a successful reliability program. The GRG consultant communicated well with all layers of the organization, enabling buy-in and cooperation from everyone. The results in terms of on-stream and production far exceeded our expectations. And just as a sidelight, this was the person that referred the senior vice president to myself. Thank you very much for your attendance. I appreciated it. I hope you've gained something, knowledge to help you decide on how you might want to move forward with things that will improve the bottom line of your refineries. Becky, that's it.
Okay, thank you so much, Tim. We'll move on now to the Q&A. Let me just switch over. We have a couple of questions that have been submitted in Slido. George asks, were operators trained using simulators?
No, they were not trained using simulators. It was all hands-on operation or training. As I said, the SVP was involved. He selected people from other parts of his organization. I don't believe he had any outside help in that endeavor.
Can you give an example of a leading indicator you used?
I would love to give you an example of a leading indicator I use, but because it is patented information, it would not be appropriate from my perspective to let that out and give away the keys to the kingdom, if you will. But in private offline discussions, we are more than willing to share those and work with people on how they could be used in their individual case.
So everyone, I will be sending out a wrap-up email, and I will include Tim's email address. So if you would like to reach out to him specifically with specific questions, you can do that. The next question is, can you give an example of a fix that was installed to improve charge rates?
Yes, I can. Something was, I'm going to give it outside of the refining industry, okay, but I've had these happen before. There was one case where we could not get the right mix of diluting a water. This is in the fertilizer plant. We could not keep the constant need for water and in the slurry to make consistent slurry. And when we looked at it from strictly a engineering perspective, the idea was to change the piping configuration, change pumps, and it would have worked. But when we asked the frontline employees to get involved and help make contributions from their perspective, they said, well, really what's happening is operators walk by and turn the valve one way to reduce the amount of, or to make the slurry right. The maintenance operators readjust it because they're using the water to cool a seal. So the avoidance of a cost there was probably in the tune of around $500,000 to $1 million.
Okay, next question is, what were the nameplate capacities of the two crude units?
And I'm going to, I don't know the answer to that question. But the value of those, of how it was approached, was that by using what contributions the frontline employees could make, also ensured that sustaining those contributions was in a safe, sustainable range.
Okay, that's the last question that was submitted via Slido. Does anybody else want to hop off mute and ask Tim something directly?
Yes, I'd like to ask a question.
Sure, please go ahead.
How many people were involved from the refinery, with management, leadership team, operators?
Um, the, about 400 people were involved, okay? It didn't start out with 400, but it grew to 400. And it grew to 400 by the work that the refinery leadership team, with my assistance, how we approached each of the layers of that organization to build a sustainable, continuous improvement. And so, like with a lot of things, you need to find some people who are leaders in all layers of the organization to start out the process with. And that's what we did. And then it grew to the whole organization, about 400 people from all layers.
Yes, but you needed, I guess the catalyst here is that you have a senior management person that really
Right.
wants this thing to work, right?
Yes.
That's the secret of this thing.
Yeah. Yes, that was key. I mean, and it really, I mean, a change of this magnitude needs support and needs evidence that they're going to get payback for their support, which we were able to supply, but it was sponsored by the senior vice president of refining.
Right.
And without that support, you may get there, but the road gets a little longer and tougher. And I think you need that support to move quickly.
Okay, thank you.
Tim, another question has been submitted via.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Are the results shown in this study going to be the same at every facility?
Excuse me for a minute. The results will not be exactly the same. The order of magnitude will probably be the same, but the beauty of the tool is that to move forward, we're getting actual data from that refinery. So the data is refinery specific. What comes out of the data leads to what can be done, or areas that can be, the improvement could be made. But so the order of magnitude of the results will be the same, but how we get there will vary from refinery to refinery.